So I just got back from out of state, and during my travels, I listened to Book 12, Sword of Kings, in the Last Kingdom series by Bernard Cornwell. And Too Long Don't Read, excellent book. If you're caught up on the series through Book 11, I highly recommend just jumping into it. Book 11 was a little slow, and as I predicted, it was setting us up for the later books in the series, such as this one. You can think of Book 11 and Book 12, if you mashed them together as one book, it kind of makes a lot more sense, right? And I think he said he's going to do about 14 in the series. That's always subject to change, but he's doing a good job on them, cranking them out so far pretty quickly, I might add. He could teach George R.R. Martin a thing or two about getting out books in a timely fashion, right? So it's only been a year since Book 11 came out, and he cranked this one out. And this is definitely the better of the two. I prefer this one. I would say this is one of my favorite books in the series, and I've read them all, some of them multiple times, right? I think Book 5 is actually probably my favorite. So this one came out really good. So it's a little over 13 hours on the audiobook, narrated by Matt Bates. I don't think the physical edition is out in the States yet for another month or so, but I believe it's out in the UK or wherever. So I'm sure you can import it, right, if you absolutely want the paper book. But if you're a busy person, or if you like to just listen to your books like I do when you're traveling, when you're working out, working, whatever, this is my preferred option, right? So, well narrated by Matt Bates. I like the way he does all the characters and voices and everything like that. He's been doing them for a few books or so now, right? And I'm used to his voice. I hope they don't change the narrator again like they have in previous books. That always drives me nuts when I'm trying to figure out which character is which character, because the voices are different, because you got a new narrator and all that stuff. It's just weird. So please stick with Matt Bates, guys. Pay him what he's worth, and hang on to him. So yeah, Too Long Don't Read, great book. It starts off kind of as a slow burn. Chapter 1, he gets pulled into kind of a skirmish at sea by some of Athelhelm Jr.'s scheming men or whatever. They're trying to blame a bunch of stuff on him. They're out there taking tolls and taxes from people in Uhtred's name around his land and stuff like that for people that are passing in their boats and all this kind of stuff. And they draw Uhtred out and they try to trap him, and he finds a way out. And pretty cool little sea battle. I enjoyed that part. I think that would be a great thing to have in the show, though I doubt they will, because sea battles and filming at sea in general is very notoriously difficult and expensive, which is probably why they didn't do it in the earlier seasons of the show that focused on the more beginning books. So it starts out a little slow, and he's trying to figure out everything that's going on. And so we go a little forward, and King Edward, ends up passing away a little bit off screen, I guess you could say. It just says, oh yeah, he was sick for a while, and then he died, right? It's not a big drawn out thing like it was with Alfred, but I guess they weren't as close as him and Alfred were. They kind of have that love-hate relationship, right? So King Edward, I wish he would have been more of a developed character in the series. In Book 5, he kind of had that little battle or whatever against Haston and all them with Uhtred and everything. Kind of helped him become a man and a warrior and everything, right? But after that, we didn't get much from Uhtred. We just heard about him, here and there, but nothing really crazy or developed, right? So he just kind of passed away sort of off screen, I guess you could say. And so now Elfweird and Athelstan are kind of battling for the throne, right? And of course Athelhelm is trying to scheme and get Elfweird on the throne so he can control him and kind of puppeteer the kingdom pretty much, right? So they're doing all that, and they keep saying, so when Uhtred is going down towards London to do all these battles and figure out what's going on and everything like that, right? He meets this Italian girl that's with another girl. I won't give too much away, right? And you can tell he's kind of building a relationship with this girl, right? Even though Uhtred is married to Edith, who's back in old Bebbanburg with the fam, and Sea Trigger is back there. King Sea Trigger, he's up in Northumbria. and all that stuff, right? But they keep talking about, oh, we hear of a plague in the north, a plague in the north, a plague in the north. You can just tell a lot of characters are about to just get wiped out. So it's kind of predictable which characters are going to get taken out by the plague. You can kind of tell some of the characters are not sort of necessary to move the plot and the story forward anymore. So Uhtred's going classic Uhtred. He's got that new Italian girl or whatever. They didn't really develop their relationship too much, I'm sure, when book 13 comes out. They're like, oh yeah, we got married, she's in Bebbanburg, blah blah blah. But Edith was never really super developed either. She kind of clashed with I forgot the queen's name, the annoying one that was in there. But anyways, so Edith didn't really do too much in the series anyway, but she gets written off towards the end. It's like, oh yeah, she died of the plague, and so did King Seatrigger and some of his grandsons and this and that, right? Speaking of characters I haven't heard of in a while, do you guys remember what happened to Citric, the one that's running? He left to run Kiartan's old fort or whatever. We haven't heard anything from him in a couple books. Maybe he passed away or something like that, but I don't remember hearing anything about him in the last couple books. I wonder what happened to Citric. Anyways, let me know if you know. But so the story goes forward. They're trying to battle basically the guards and all those people. I forgot the head guard's name, but he gets lured out of London with all his men, and except for like the old and the elderly and a few guards that guard London, right? And then he gets taken over by Athelhelm's men and all these goons and everything, right? Speaking of goons, there was a character I liked in this book, Wehrman, if I'm saying his name correctly. Big hulking, jacked character, right? Real nasty guy, and he was fun to read about in the book. And I think the best scenes and story from the book comes from the clashing of Uhtred and Wehrman in the book. I would say the best scene in the entire book is where Uhtred ends up getting captured. You know, they're out in the woods and they've had a couple brawls before. Uhtred is injured. They have that whole little, the ex-slaves rebel against Uhtred and all his people. That's a great scene, by the way. When they're hiding in that farm thing, some of them get injured. And then Wehrman comes, you know, time of opportunity, somehow ends up capturing Uhtred, and, you know, he gets stripped down, humiliated, all his men go pee-pee on him, right? And they drag him behind the horse, you know, they're taking him back, they're humiliating him, they take his sword, they take his hammer amulet, which, by the way, they didn't really talk about this in the book, but in previous books, they talk about how Uhtred has had that hammer amulet since he was, you know, like a young kid, basically, right? I think Ragnar, the Elder, gave it to him, and that got taken from him, and it never said anything about him getting that amulet back in this book. He just bought an amulet off some random guy, right? He's like, I'll give you 3 shillings for this amulet, which I thought was kind of weird. He didn't get his other amulet back, but hey, maybe it got sold, maybe it got lost or whatever, right? It's believable. But I'm surprised more of a big deal wasn't made about that amulet getting taken as well as his sword. I know the sword is a bigger deal, but that amulet was talked about in previous books as him having, you know, he's had that for decades, right? But anyways, just a funny thing to think about. So yeah, we had some real cool battles and scenes between Wehrman and Uhtred, and, you know, finally Uhtred, he found a way. I actually thought, speaking of characters we haven't heard much from in a while, I thought Uhtred was going to get taken out in this book. I thought Wehrman was actually going to take him out, because if you follow the actual history of Uhtred of Bebbanburg, there's a you know, he gets caught in some kind of trap, and then they take him out. This is in real life, right, in the real history. And then Uhtred's son, Uhtred, or whatever his name was in real life, then there's a blood feud back and forth, right? I thought that was going to kind of be between Athelhelm and Uhtred in the books or the show or whatever, right? So I was thinking, hey, maybe he's going to get taken out, and then Uhtred, the younger Uhtred's son, is going to take over in the final 2 books. I thought that was actually going to happen. I thought he was done for when he got caught up with Wehrman and all the men and everything. So I thought that was going to be over, so that was a good little twist or whatever, right? If you want to look into the real history of this, there's a cool channel on YouTube as well called History Time, and he has a channel, or not a channel, but he has a video called The Real Uhtred of Bebbanburg. Great channel, by the way. Shout out History Time on YouTube. Cool channel. But that's a great video. It'll give you some of the real history on the real life Uhtred of Bebbanburg. So yeah. But yeah, speaking of people we haven't heard much from in a while, the past like 2 or 3 books, we have heard almost nothing from Uhtred, Uhtred's son, Uhtredson. He was just kind of off doing other things in this book or whatever, right? Kind of weird. They haven't really developed Uhtred's son, which bugs me at this point. I feel like that character should be a lot more developed at this point, because he already has his own sons and kids or whatever, right? So that's kind of weird. I hope his son gets developed more in the final books, or how many ever books are going to be, right? So minor complaint there, but maybe there's more planned that we don't know about, right? So what else? So yeah, they end up fighting over London. So Athelstan, it's either Athelstan or goofy kid Elfweird, who's actually about 20 now, I think, in the books, that are going to end up being king. If Elfweird wins, obviously Athelhelm would kind of puppeteer the king and run the kingdom that way, right? By proxy. So they end up fighting and scheming and all that stuff. And Uhtred, he always kind of schemes and finds a way, right? There's always a couple things that are recurring things in the books. Uhtred kind of chasing a new girl, right? The love interests, and then some kind of scheme to get over on greater forces, and stuff like that, right? So and the oaths, of course, the old goofy oaths. But hey, it moves the plot forward, right? So we'll suspend our disbelief a little bit and just enjoy the book, right? But yeah, great book. Eventually, Uhtred takes out Wehrman. Pretty good little battle, by the way, that they had. And what I wasn't so crazy about is that Athelhelm kind of got killed off screen or whatever, right? It's like, oh yeah, he got caught by, so-and-so's men leaving trying to leave the city right after they lost the battle. And then they snatched up Elfweird as he was trying to leave, and they took all his gold and then took him back to the castle, and then Athelstan, pretended to be all nice and good to him and everything, and he fell for it, and then he stabbed him, right? Not a huge, satisfying death, I guess you would say. But hey, it's what I like about these book series. They're kind of historical fiction. They're sort of rooted in real life. What I like about this series, there's not a bunch of dragons and fantasy and goofy stuff flying around, right? It's just it's rooted in reality. That's why I like this series. It's historical, but it's fiction. It's fun. So I enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to books 13, 14, maybe more. I'm happy that Bernard Cornwell is putting these out in a timely fashion, and he's still doing a good job with them. I'm always worried when my authors that I like, they start to get up there in age and they haven't finished their book series, right? Especially their flagship book series, right? So that's what happened to me with Robert Jordan and the Wheel of Time series. They had to have Brandon Sanderson take his notes and finish the final books in the series, which he did a good job, by the way, on those, with the material that he had and all that. But Robert Jordan honestly just kind of dragged that out way too long. So I'm happy that Bernard Cornwell is cranking them out in a timely fashion. He's getting a little up there in age. I think he's in his 70s, but he's not like decrepit or whatever, right? He looks like a healthy guy. He speaks well. I think he'll live, over 100 probably, right? He looks like he takes care of himself. But just in case, I want him to finish the book series as quick as possible, right? But so yeah, good job, Bernard Cornwell, on book 12. I enjoyed it. Highly recommend this series and the TV show, and check out the real history if you're into that kind of stuff too. But excellent book series, and thanks for watching.